So, it has been several years since I've really posted regular videos on this channel, and I want to kind of get back into it. And I want to talk about the big story of the day, or what really should be the big story of the day, although there has been a number of distractions going on. But the Epstein files, I think, are a big thing. And I think this story could end up being larger than Watergate in terms of a scandal, and definitely go down in history as something. Um, and so let's talk about sort of how it starts. So let's go back and let's talk about what a colossal failure it is. But let's start with Epstein himself. Let's talk about when he killed himself. And you'll see that I sort of did those air quotes because when he initially killed himself, I kept hearing people say, "Oh, Epstein didn't kill himself," and I was like, "Okay, I could see that. I could see it go either way. Maybe he killed himself, maybe he didn't. Let's wait for more information to come." But as more information has come, it looks more and more suspicious. Like there's been a bunch of evidence that points to the cameras malfunctioning at just the moment when he was supposed to hang himself. That seems a little suspicious. And then we've got eyewitnesses who said they were there, saying they saw him got taken away somewhere else to a different cell, or taken outside or something like that. And so that's suspicious too. And a number of other things that I'm not really going to go into a whole lot because I don't want to dwell too much on that. But I do think there's a lot of questions basically on his death. But let's look at the files themselves. And this stretches over several presidential administrations. So let's get that out of the way first. All right. Now, one thing Trump initially said when he was elected president was that he would release the Epstein files. Nothing came of this for a while. However, later, when pressure was increasing on it, Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk when people kept asking her about it. However, later, then she supposedly had these files in like these binders she gave to select people. And they walked out with that, and they basically said something about, okay, we'll reveal a little bit more information, but the select people have to go through and look at them. But then nothing came of that, and you hardly ever hear about that anymore. However, then later, she just flat out denied the files exist. How dare you even ask about them? And Trump basically backed her up on that and said to stop bringing it up. However, finally, last November or so, Congress decided to take it up, and you have basically two congressmen spearheading this. You have Republican Thomas Massie of Kentucky and Democrat Ro Khanna of California drafting a bill to force their release. And it was about that time that Massie started saying that he had witnesses that he would read their testimony from Congress, since they couldn't do so themselves for legal reasons. Some of them had signed contracts or non-disclosure agreements. Whatever about that, Congress has specific immunities that they can read stuff into the congressional record, such as was the case back in the 70s when Senator Mike Gravel read out the Pentagon Papers and brought those to public records. So Massie continued to say he would read the names, and for initially it started to appear he was bluffing. It's because he kept saying it for several months. He's like, "Oh, I'll read the names, and this seemed exciting at first, but then I started thinking, is he really going to read the names? Because he keeps threatening to. Why doesn't he just go ahead and do it? But they did set up a deadline for the release of the files and the names. And that came and went. And initially, they missed the deadline, didn't release any of the files. But then a little while after that, they did. They released something. They released files, but they were highly redacted. Maybe even more redacted than what was on it, than what you did see on it. And this was no surprise to many of us. Then we see that. But then, about this time, the FBI started claiming, that there's no proof that Epstein is running a sex ring. Like the FBI says, we've looked into it. There's no evidence that Epstein was running a sex ring. Really? Then what did he go to jail for? What did Ghislaine Maxwell go to jail for? I mean, what is this, some sort of a circus show or something? Now let's get to the chaos that ensued and some of the excuses for it. So, finally, Ro Khanna read 6 names that he and Thomas Massie had found that had been redacted and had initially been cautious about naming them. They wanted the DOJ to look into it further, because I remember they had a couple interviews where people would ask them, okay, who are these names? And they were trying to pressure them to name it. And they gave some hints, but they wouldn't give the direct names because they wanted the DOJ to look into it to make sure that these people were legitimately people that needed to be looked into, and to find out why their names had been redacted. Well, the DOJ decided to unredact them after that. And so it's like, okay, so I guess that means that these are people legitimately to look into. So then Pam Bondi went to Congress this past week, and oh my goodness, did it all fall apart here. Rather than addressing the questions asked, she would insult those asking the questions with seemingly prepared remarks. She shifted, she wouldn't answer the questions, and then at one point she started bringing up how great the Dow is. She's like, oh, none of this is important, but the Dow is so high right now. And like, what does that have to do with anything? She was just deflecting. Then there were also victims present that were going to stand up, and she basically just blew them off as well. Now, I've seen several excuses up the wazoo for what's going on here and why this is happening, and saying, oh, why this is not really a bad thing. And basically even some people claiming that Pam Bondi did a great job. And I was like, are you even watching the same thing the rest of us are watching? Like, she didn't answer the questions. She deflected. I mean, what's going on here? But among some of those excuses I see, and mostly from people who have been like staunch Trump supporters unconditionally, they claim that yes, his name is in there many times, but that alone doesn't prove guilt. And this is true. So yeah, a lot of people's names are in there that are just incidental names that are mentioned. So this is a legitimate point to bring up, that yeah, just because your name is in there doesn't necessarily mean that you're guilty. So you have to make the connection of well, what context is this name in there? So I'll give them that. That makes a whole lot of sense. And it's something to keep in mind. And then they also bring up a point about Trump calling the police on Epstein back in 2006. Okay, again, we'll roll with that. As for this administration's colossal failures, though, to handle it, they will deflect by saying, why didn't Obama or Biden release anything when they were president? Interesting, right? Okay, why didn't they release it? Well, maybe it's because they or someone close to them are in the files and they're covering for them. It's weird that they would bring this up as a counter argument, as it basically tries to like almost defend the Democrats, because it's like, oh, they want to go after Trump. And it's true. The Democrats wanted to go after Trump for everything. So they're like, Orange Man bad. Yeah, that's all stuff that they would go after him. But if it would incriminate them as well, that's why they would hide it. So I think that's why they didn't release it, because it incriminates them as well, right? It doesn't say anything about whether Trump is in it or not, but it is suspicious how his administration has been handling it. And so, yeah, that's why that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, as I was preparing this video, I see something that, remember those 6 names that were read out? Well, they say now that 4 of them are probably innocent. Now, there's 2 of them, and I think I know which 2 are the definitely guilty ones, because one of them was the Sultan guy, who apparently sent an email that was really about a really disgusting video saying, but the understanding here was that the Department of Justice would look through here and make sure that these names were someone who shouldn't be there, why they redacted, all that stuff. And so they were going to go through it and do their due diligence. But they didn't do that. And so that's why they ended up releasing the name. Regardless, though, that doesn't still excuse any of the fact of how badly this has been handling it. Like, what's with all this shifting of blame? Just deal with it and try and investigate it like you're supposed to do. The FBI has failed, the DOJ has failed, like everyone who's supposed to be doing what they're supposed to be doing has failed. Now, when all this is said and done, how many people will be going to jail? That's a real question. Well, if I had to guess, I'd imagine very few, right? At least in America, as so many powerful people are involved and so many different levels, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter what, but we are seeing something from other countries. For instance, the King of England's own brother has been stripped of his royal titles, and now they're going to open up an investigation on him. So maybe something will come out of that. Okay, at least, and maybe some other countries will start dealing with it. Hopefully we'll get some justice, but it's just a whole hurricane, I guess is how I could say it now, of what's going on right now. And this is probably going to continue on for several years until we get to the bottom of this. But really, if you thought the government was corrupt, and if you had any doubt that the government was corrupt at the different levels, I guess this should be your proof, though, and just how involved everything is.